All right. Well, these few news articles I thought were interesting. Twitter has decided to label NPR as state-affiliated media, which is quite outrageous. The whole point of National Public Radio is it's funded by the listeners, and although it gets, they say, 1% of their money from the government, they don't let the government control them. And so it's ridiculous to give them the same label that you give, say, RT, or Al Jazeera, that are official state-sponsored government channels. And this just shows what we've all seen ever since Elon Musk took over Twitter, is he's basically just a mega fanatic right-winger, and anybody who isn't like a Trump type MAGA person he regards as too far left. So he claimed he was going to make a free speech zone, but free speech is currently used just to mean right-wing speech. Anyway, so NPR is complaining about this, and I think, there will come some point when the news agencies actually leave Twitter. I hear them all say they have to be on Twitter, that's where all the action is, but Musk is making Twitter more and more hostile to where people will leave. The New York Times, he announced a few days ago he was going to take away the blue check marks from anybody that didn't pay, but the only person he took away from was the New York Times, because he hates them for the same reason. He regards the New York Times and NPR as being liberal propaganda, which is what most far-right MAGA people think, but the rest of us think they're serious sources of good news. Anyway, so Google is putting nearby share. I think I saw a student trying to use this in class. If you have an iPhone and a Mac, you can share files directly from the iPhone to the Mac very easily. There's a thing called Apple, I forget the name of it. There's a special Apple protocol you can use to just instantly drag pictures from your phone to your computer, and Windows and Android are getting the same thing here, nearby share. So you can just send things from your phone to your Windows device without having to configure a file share or send it up to the internet first or anything. And so that's a good thing to know. And apparently it's working pretty well according to this. I just recorded Paul's Security Weekly podcast, and the guest on it was the guy who developed this program. And I think this might be of great interest to my students. A lot of my students do not have a degree, and they want to get an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree, but they don't want to do computer programming and operating system design, which is pretty much what you have to do to get a CS degree. They would like to do security, and there are very few security programs to take, and this one sounds like a really good one. It's in Boise, Idaho. It is 100% online, so you don't need to go there. It is relatively inexpensive, about $15,000 for the whole degree, and it takes transfer credits from classes you've taken elsewhere, like the classes you might have taken here, and he claims to be very flexible about that. So you can get an undergraduate degree in cyber operations and resilience, or a graduate degree, a Master of Science in cyber operations and resilience. And he says there's many different paths, so you might want to look into this if you're looking for a degree. Boise State, Idaho might be the most reasonable way to get that degree if you need one. So bacterial infections are becoming a big problem because there are only a few types of antibiotics. First there was penicillin, now there's a few others, but there's not very many. And because people abuse these antibiotics and take them all the time, people develop antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And there's something like 1 million people die every year now from infections that cannot be stopped because there is no antibiotic that will stop it. So the next thing to try is phages. Phages are little virus-like things that kill bacteria, and they've been used for a long time. The problem is they're very targeted. They only kill one bacteria. So you have to develop a phage to kill the one you're trying to kill. It's not broad-spectrum antibiotic like penicillin. But now people are talking more about doing this. There have been several attempts in the past to use it. In fact, some people were using phages before they had any antibiotics. And so this is now becoming increasingly a topic of medical interest. So we may hear a lot more about this in the future. VW, Volkswagen, and some company called Redwood are setting up recycling centers to take your old laptop and cell phone batteries, which is a really good idea. And it turns out not only is this better for the environment than throwing them in the trash, it's also they're superior. They say the reason they're doing this is because recycled battery materials perform better than fresh materials, which is strange, but that's what they say. So it's actually valuable for them to get the recycled batteries and extract the materials and build new batteries out of them. So VW locations will be places where you can get rid of the batteries in all your electronics. Not just car batteries, but also all your other portable electronic batteries. They now are talking about how we are going to have another COVID booster, which will just be another shot of the same bivalent thing from before, but they argued a lot about whether to authorize this, and apparently they are going to authorize it for high-risk people, which is people with immune compromise or over 65. And there are some people think they should lower that to 50 and such. There are different standards, but anyway, there will be some availability for that booster this fall. Samsung discovered that their workers are using ChatGPT to fix code and to summarize meetings and such, and so they found 3 occasions in 20 days when the Samsung workers put confidential information into ChatGPT, which runs on a server outside Samsung and can be echoed back to other queries and is considered a bad thing. So in one case, they put in the source code of a proprietary program to fix errors. This is something people are doing. Apparently, if you put buggy source code into ChatGPT, it will find the bugs and fix them. So that's a quite valuable process. And so it sounds good. And their solution is, for the time being, they're limiting the input to ChatGPT to only 1024 characters. But in the long run, they're going to make their own server running their own instance of ChatGPT privately, so their employees can use it for things like this without exposing the data. And that sounds like a very good thing to do, and probably a lot more companies are going to do that too. Especially if ChatGPT can remove bugs and whatever, it can probably remove security flaws in code too. So it really would be extremely valuable to have that at your company. It made a good project. I might try and write that up. We could be taking the kind of code we're using in Exploit Development class, code with vulnerabilities. We could be feeding it to ChatGPT and see if it will remove the vulnerabilities. It seems like it should be able to, and that would be quite useful. Maybe it can find the vulnerabilities in code and explain them to you. That would be nice. So T-Mobile, U.S. is a data broker owned by Deutsche Telekom. I assume it's the same as T-Mobile. I don't really know. But anyway, it's interesting to see what they say. A lot of people are finding out, Americans are finding out more and more how everything is spying on you, which a lot of people don't know. So here they are talking about how they combine T-Mobile data with billions of daily data signals, behavioral, environmental, and contextual, to reveal who your audience is, what they do, where they go, and what they buy. They have a comprehensive and privacy-compliant view of the apps a user has downloaded and how often they engage with them. 50 million households, 110 million customers, and billions of data signals. And they package this up and sell it to you so you can use it for advertising. So it's just a thing we should all be aware of, is that all your apps on your phone and your smart TV and your car and pretty much everything you use is spying on you to an incredible extent, and that data is being gathered and sold to all kinds of people without you being notified and without any restriction in America of who can do what with it, really, because we don't have any privacy legislation. Apple is discontinuing production of the M2 chip. I have an M1 Mac, but apparently not enough people bought the M2 Mac. They're just sitting there. Apparently the M2 has some problem with performance too. It's not as good as people expected it to be. So I think a lot of people are just going to wait for the M3. And Apple's M2 is not a hit in the marketplace. Maybe that the COVID pandemic caused part of that problem. So people talk about virtual reality, where you wear this box on your head and have a 3D experience where you can travel around. It turns out even people that own those devices, almost none of them use it anymore. Only 4% of teenagers that own one of those box on your head devices uses it daily, and only like 13% of them use it once a week. The virtual reality just is not, the devices are not there yet. Apple is supposedly going to come out with an augmented reality smart set of glasses soon, and maybe that will be good enough that people can use it. I don't know. But the existing virtual reality devices are not pleasant enough to use or attractive enough for very many people to be willing to use them yet. There's a long article on MIT Technology Review which explains how Russia killed their tech industry, and they've been doing it for a long time, the same way China has, by sort of seizing companies that make money and crushing them. But when the war in Ukraine started, everybody who could get a job outside Russia fled. An incredible number of tech people have fled from Russia, and now they're even crushing Yandex, which is their main company. And they're punishing Yandex, which is their equivalent of Google, because Yandex did not filter the internet enough to make sure that you can't find the truth. They order all internet news sources to only repeat Russia propaganda. and not the truth. And Yandex didn't do that well enough, so it's very unpleasant to run any kind of company in Russia now, and everybody's fleeing as fast as they can. And this is probably going to be at least a whole generation of tech shortfall in Russia as all the people that can do anything technically leave, and the only people left behind are just strangled by the need to lie so much. And M1 to M2 is a great path to save electric power on AI model training. Well, that might be true. Yep, there might be an issue with the M2 performance for that, but that's true. Anyway, so that's an interesting article. And this is a company, KPMG, is making a product called Cranium to secure your AI. Now, I don't know how it works, but this is huge now. As AI is exploding all over the place, we're all finding out it has serious security flaws. And so these guys are going to create some kind of security product to secure your artificial intelligence. So I don't really know what it's going to do, but it's an end-to-end AI security and trust platform. So there's certainly a need for that. And they look like they're one of the pioneers to get going on AI security. There's another Wi-Fi insecurity found, again, a very weak one. What happens here is if you are downloading stuff on a Wi-Fi network and you lose your connection, then the access point might get some responses intended for you after you've disconnected. And what they often will do is queue those up in a buffer so that when you reconnect, they can send it to you. But it turns out that they might store it in plain text because they might have to re-encrypt it with a different key. When you reconnect to the access point, you might have a different key. So under certain conditions, an attacker can connect and claim to be you and provide a different key, and they can then get the packets that were intended for you. So it's not a very powerful attack, but it does mean that under some circumstances, somebody could get a few packets of data that were really intended for someone else and defeat the encryption. So that's a thing to know, and there are some mitigation steps put down here. For access point developers, use a recent Linux kernel, which apparently will prevent this. Flush traffic on key changes. They say if a client reconnects with a different key, then throw away the traffic and re-download the traffic. That seems like a good idea. And for hotspot users, they say don't send unencrypted traffic. So if you have a second level of encryption on top of your data, like HTTPS or DNS or HTTPS, or I would imagine a VPN, then there's not that much of a problem, because even if the additional encryption added by the Wi-Fi hotspot doesn't work, you have another layer of encryption that would protect you. Another reason why you should be using VPNs, it makes you safer to use VPNs on your mobile devices. And if students asked about cloud security class, and I looked into certifications, there are cloud security certifications for Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, and then there are vendor-neutral ones, CompTIA Cloud Plus and the CCSP, Certified Cloud Security Professional, from the same people that make the CISSP. So it is a good point. I'm going to look into writing this class and getting it ready. It'll probably take a year or so to get it approved, but we probably should have a cloud security class. Right now I'm thinking this might be the one to do, the vendor-neutral one, but I haven't quite decided yet. But it's a very good point. It was a student question. It's a very good question. So I'm going to stop.